Visit Sailrite.com for all your project supplies, tools, and instructions. Introducing the Sailrite Sheet Bag and Winch Cover Kit. This kit includes materials and patterns to make 2 sheet bags and 2 winch covers. The sheet bags feature SuperShok Bungee Cord, which is the world's best UV and weather-resistant shock cord. They also come with YKK Snads, so you can install them without drilling holes in your fiberglass. The sheet bags feature Phifertex mesh for great breathability and drainage. Both sheet bags and winch covers are also made using Sattler solution-dyed Marine Grade Acrylic fabric for extra long life. Let's get started and show you how to make your sheet bags and winch covers. First, we'll start with a sheet bag and using the pattern. This is the pattern that comes with the sheet bag and winch cover kit. The blue is the mesh fabric and the red is the Sattler Marine Grade fabric, and there's a link to the video code. The first task is to separate the mesh fabric from the acrylic fabric, the red and the blue, so we'll just cut it in half here. We're going to set aside the mesh fabric first and work with the acrylic fabric, this one. This is a Sattler solution-dyed marine grade acrylic that's available from Sailrite in a multitude of colors. You can pick your color for your particular application at Sailrite.com. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pin the fabric at 2 locations on big patterns like this, like at the end here. And then we'll do this for every single pattern. So down here, I'll do it over here, just so while we're cutting, nothing moves on us. So since this kit includes 2 projects, a sheet bag and the winch cover, you can see it's labeled winch cover here. The only 2 patterns for the sheet bag on the acrylic are these 2. So we're going to cut these 2 out and we'll come back to these 2 or these other patterns later. You may be asking, why is he cutting it out with scissors? Well, there is no raw edges that are exposed on this because they're all going to be hemmed under. So there's really no reason to use a hot knife for this because you will not have any unraveling issues. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut these 2 out, and these are holes for grommets, which we'll show after we've got it all cut out. This is the facing for 1 bag, this is the facing for 2. We're only going to show sewing 1 bag, so I'm going to set that one aside. Grommets are placed in these 2 holes here. So this is a number 0 grommet, so I've got my Sailrite drill hole cutter set. You can buy these individually as well. This is a number 0, or you could use something to punch a hole the size for the grommet. I'm going to insert it in my drill here. I'm going to put a cutting block on the underside so we don't drill through my table, and I'm just going to drill right through the pattern and the fabric like that, and also over here. Now we can remove the pattern. Using the Sattler Marine Grade fabric, we're going to create a facing for the top of the sheet bag. So this is a piece of scrap that's not in the pattern, and I've cut it to 4 inches by about 1.5 inches. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these over top of each other. These are reinforcements inside of the facing, so you'll never see this. And I'm going to put a hole about 1 inch from the end through both of them here. So they're like this. This part's for chafe protection. This part's for grommet reinforcement. So they're going to go like this, facing towards the inside, and this one facing towards the inside, so the long edges are in. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our number 0 spur grommet that's included in the kit. The spur grommets have teeth like this, so they bite in well, and a number 0 die set, which is not included in the kit. So unfortunately, you probably need to purchase that. Okay, we're going to put the male portion on the anvil here. Then we're going to take that scrap off. We're going to feed this through the hole that we made, and we're going to put the scrap on like this so that it's fairly straight. And then we're going to put the teeth on top of that, like that. Put the tool on the top and use a mallet. And then we just want to make sure that the teeth are sunk in well. Looks like it could use a few blows over there, so I'm going to position it slightly. There we go. They're both installed. Okay, with this scrap facing up, we're going to put a line 1 inch up from this edge all the way down, and I'm going to use my chalk
pin for this. This is really nice. It does leave a little bit of residue, but that residue comes off beautifully as long as it's white. And we're going to go down the entire length over here, and then we'll do the same thing over here, 1 inch up, so we can create a 1/2 inch hem. The kit also includes this seam stick basting tape for canvas. We're going to put it along both long edges, just like this, about an 1/8 inch or so away from the raw edge. This one doesn't really matter. We'll break off the ends, and we'll do it over here as well. I'm using the Sailrite canvas patterning ruler to adhere the double-sided tape well to the Sattler fabric. Sattler fabric is very stain resistant and not many glues stick well to it, so that helps the double-sided tape to stick. Then we're going to peel off the transfer paper and we're going to create a 1/2 inch hem. And so this hem will go straight to the line like that, and that makes it very accurate. So when we get to the grommets, it just encapsulates a little bit of the edge of the reinforcement, and then what we're going to do is we're going to use this to crease it down well. And we're going to do this on this side, all the way down this side, and also this side. Okay, now that these two are hemmed, what we're going to do is we're going to fold this in half and crease it without double-sided tape. So I want to basically make sure the edges line up, and then I'm going to crease it well by using the Sailrite canvas patterning ruler. If you don't have this, you could use a heavy object. Sometimes I use metal scissors, the ends of the metal scissors, not the blades, but the handle. And then I'll show you what's next after this. So here's our crease. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the clear acrylic ruler, and then I'm just going to use a number 2 pencil or a scribe ball pencil, and I'm going to mark so that it's right in that crease. This is a reference line for me. If you're using a light fabric, you may want to make sure that the pencil doesn't show through the other side, but this is not a light fabric, so I don't have to worry about it. Now this end will be sewn to this end. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to put double-sided tape, but I'm going to avoid putting it in the 1/2 inch area where we're going to sew. And I'm going to put it on top, so it's centered basically around the edge of this raw hem, which helps to hold the hem down in place, and it'll be used in a future step. So I'm going to put it on this side, and then I'm also going to put it on that side, and I'm also going to put it on the center. So here I'm going to keep it about 1 inch away from this edge right here so we can sew that. Here, the same thing on the center. Now, I don't want to put it on this side where the grommets are. I want to put it on the side that does not have the grommets, and I want to put it right on that pencil mark or the score that we made so that this can be used as a reference as well. So do this accurately here with this double-sided tape, because you're going to be able to see it in a future step, and I'll show you how we use it. Break it a little bit from this edge, and then we'll put it on this one as well. Then go over all of them with something hard like the Sailrite canvas patterning ruler. What we're going to do next is we're going to flip it so the outside surface is up, and we're going to put outside surfaces facing each other like this with these edges lined up, and then we're going to take it to the machine and sew it. Now don't worry about the unraveling at the ends. That's going to be on the inside. So we're going to sew a 1/2 inch from this edge, and I will hold the trailer threads. I'm trying to stay out of the cameraman's way. And do a little bit of reversing here. The cameraman is in my way. And a little bit of reversing here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a French seam without a backup. Now the reason that I'm going to do a French seam without a backing, usually a French seam has a backing, is that it just makes it easier when we fold this onto our assembly. So I splay it out like this, and then I'll feed it into the machine. And I know this forms a loop, so it might be hard for you to see, but I'm going to lower my foot there, and I'm going to try to hold this up so that you can see it, and try to guide it in. So it's basically just putting a stitch about 1/8 inch away, and I do need to do some reversing here. And I'm going to sew down this side, and then I'm going to sew down the other side from the other end. So we'll reverse at the end as well. 2 battens will come in the kit, and we need to cut them to size. I'm going to cut to 12 inches. And then I'm going to cut a 9-inch section for each of the sheet bags. So 9 inches right here. And you can use a hacksaw to cut this fiberglass batten.
For speed, we're simply using a chop saw, but a hacksaw will work as well.
So the ends are fairly sharp, and what I do is use a file. Of course, I can't find my file, or a coarse sandpaper will do the job too. But you definitely want to try to smooth out the corners and the edges of each one of the batten ends, the 12-inch and the 9-inch. This is the 12-inch batten, and what I want to do is I want to find the middle and put a hole right in the center. So I'm going to mark it with a marker, and then 1 inch from the ends right in the middle here, and also here. We're going to drill 3 holes in this with a 3/16-inch drill bit. I usually do this off the edge of a table and just a standard 3/16-inch drill bit, and put a trash can underneath, go all the way through like that, and we'll do that for all 3.
It's now time to grab the pattern material and cut out the mesh fabric.
I'm going to pin through our pattern material for a mesh fabric. I have my Phifertex standard underneath here, and you can see that we have a small and a large. We're making the large bag. For smaller boats, you may want to consider the smaller one. And you see we have side panel number 1, side panel number 2, this goes for 1 bag, side panel number 3, and side panel number 4, that's for the second bag. And then we have the sheet bag body for 1 and the sheet bag body for the second one. And they all have large and small marks. So if you're making a small one, you cut here, making the large one, cut here. Now I highly recommend that you keep this portion of your pattern. So when you're done with your pattern, you just put this on top, and then you can paper clip them all together. That way you know exactly when you get a lot of these kits from Sailrite, which you will eventually have on our website, you'll know exactly what it's for, and you'll also have a link to the video with this QR code. This is not the accurate QR code yet, because the video we're working on now. Okay, these 3 are all you need for a single sheet bag. We've set the other ones aside. We're going to set the patterns aside, and we will be using those in the future if we need to make more sheet bags, so we're going to save them. These 2 panels go on like this, so the rounded part faces the inside of this, and we'll start sewing here. This one will eventually go on in the same manner. We're going to take these 2 over to the sewing machine and sew these.
Sewing the mesh material together is next.
We have our magnetic guide set at a 1/2 inch. The needle's in center position. We're sewing a 6mm straight stitch. We are going to do a little bit of reversing here at the beginning, even though there is going to be a facing at the top edge. We're going to match up raw edges and sew down the length of this until we get to the 90-degree turn. Now, before I get to the turn, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bury my needle, and then I'm going to make a slit in this panel about a 1/2 inch from the edge, but not going more than a 1/2 inch, like that. And what I'll do is I'll sew up to that point slowly. I'm right across from that point, but I do want my needle to come up before I lift my foot, come up a little bit without exiting the fabric. I will lift my foot and I will pull this around to make this 90-degree turn, like that. Make sure the fabric's flat before the front of the needle, and it is. Lower the foot, don't forget to lower the foot, and continue to sew down the side. This side is the curved side, so we want to match up the curve as we sew. So I'm going to pull this assembly over so that it matches up with the other assembly directly across from the needle is the important area. Okay, now I'm pretty much back to the straightaway, so I'm going to match up the edges as I sew. And I'm a little bit off here. We do expect that. We give you a little bit of excess fabric so that you can trim it away when you're done. Because sewing, unfortunately, even though things can be mathematically right, sewing often results in things that aren't perfect, because it depends on exactly how you line things up. So that side is done. Now we're going to go back to our table. Okay, I hope you can see that this side is rounded. This is the back side of our bag. So this one would go in so that the round is going like that towards basically in the same direction. And this edge is this edge that's flush. So when I sew this on, I'd have to sew it on with this panel being on the underside. And usually it's off if I sew it because it's just sewing on differently. So what I do is I match up this edge with this edge because that's where it's perfect. And then what I'll do is I'll take a stapler, just an office stapler, and I'll staple it close to the raw edge. We'll pull these staples out later, and that way I can make sure that it's going to come out exactly like the other one did. So this panel will now be on top, which means I can cut my 1/2 inch here like this. So a 1/2 inch from this, I can just cut this in advance. This is where we're going to pivot. Did that cut? Yeah, I did. And I'll put a staple right here, close to that edge. Okay. And then we'll walk this around and we're going to staple this on and check to make sure that it's right, and we can make modifications if we need to. So we were off about a 1/4 inch or so over here, so I tried to be off by about a 1/4 inch over here, and I put a staple over here and notice that I have some excess fabric. So I'll pull these staples and I'll work this excess fabric into here. These edge match pliers actually work really well for removing staples like this. We have other staple removing tools, but I love them for matching up fabric, and I love them for pulling out staples. So what I've done is I've kind of distributed the excess fabric along this curve, so you can see that it doesn't lay perfectly flat, and that's perfectly fine because now we have everything that lines up well, and we should be able to take it to the machine and now sew it. So we can just start up here at the top with this side panel on the top side and the square panels on the bottom. I'll do a little bit of reversing here again, and we'll just sew a 1/2 inch from this edge. These are all stapled together, so the concept should be pretty easy. If you've got a little bit of a bubble, kind of push that bubble and distribute it like this. So see, I've made 2 bubbles out of 1, and then I sew slowly, trying to avoid any kind of major wrinkles, which I didn't get, so I'm good. I put the notch over here. It's not going to hurt anything, but it really should have been on this side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to notch just this panel at a 1/2 inch approximately, right there, which will basically take out this corner, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Okay, so that will make it easier to turn that corner as we reach it. Make sure this fabric is out so we don't have any excess fabric underneath there. Sorry, my hands are in the way. There we go. Now I'm directly across from that notch, needle's coming up slightly, lift the foot, turn this over and lower the foot and sew up the side. This is the back side that'll be up against the wall. We're going to take this and we're going to fold this right in half so we can find the center. And I'm going to actually take my scissors and make a notch in this so I know right where the center is in the back side. We're going to trim off the excess that we have at the top, and we also removed the staples that we have on the one side. There we go, it's even across the top.
In this chapter, we'll baste the facing that's made from canvas to the top of the mesh bag.
We also put a notch on the front, like we did on the back, in the same manner on this bag, so you have one there and there. And then on this one, what I want to do is I want to put the grommets across from each other like this, so they're directly on top of each other. And then I want to fold here, and then I want to put a mark right here, and also right there. Then I want to take this and I want to turn this right side out. Just by doing that. Okay, make sure that all of your seam sticks sticking. Sometimes I just do that to make sure. And then we'll take this bag. This bag is wrong side out. It should stay wrong side out. Seams are out. This is right side out. Grommets should be facing me, not the bag. See, the grommets are closer to me. And we are going to, let's see, the grommets would go on the front side, so this has to go, so the back side's up, so the curve is facing the tabletop. And then I'm going to take off the double-sided tape in the middle, not on the two sides. That's going to stay on. So I'm going to take off the transfer paper, not the double-sided tape, all the way around the perimeter. Okay. Grommets are facing me, and we know where the center is based on that line that we did. So here's our notch. What I want to do is I'm going to try to keep this out of the way so you can see it, so that this is a good way to do it. So I'm going to put the bag in the center position, right there, and I'm going to have it go right on that line that we have. So right on that line, left, and I'm going to go this direction first. When I get to the seam, I'm going to splay the seam out, so I'm going to roll this around. I got double-sided tape on the table, because I was trying to lay it flat for you. So if you roll it around like this, it actually works pretty well. So to see the seam is, I'm just going to splay it out. Doesn't matter if it goes one way or the other, but I just have it go out. And then I continue to roll. And when I get to this one, this seam, I am going to stop there with that seam basted down, and I'm going to start in the middle again and go the other direction to that seam again. Okay, so pretty easy. This is our 12-inch batten, and the blowout on the bottom won't matter because we're going to put snaps in it, so don't worry about that, but I still like to protect the edges a little bit more from abrasion. So this is some of my scrap Phifertex, and all I'm going to do is cut it just a little bit shy of the hole like this, and then we'll put double-sided tape on this side and the other short side like this, and all I'm going to do is wrap this around. Believe me, this double-sided tape sticks really well, and once I wrap it around, you're going to see that, hey, this thing is not going anywhere. I'm going to try to prevent going over my hole. I'm going to wrap that, I'm going to wrap that around so it's fairly tight and I still have access to my hole. So now what I'll do is I'll just cut it, but not where the batten is. The batten's right here. I'll just cut a little bit beyond there. And these edges, or the fabric, will help to keep it from abrading. And we'll do the same thing over here. This is just an extra precaution. And the 9-inch batten, I'm going to peel off the transfer paper, and then I'm going to stick it inside. And what we want to do is we don't want it right on that line. Okay, we really want it kind of above the line a little bit, but not too much, because it'll make it harder to sew. And we want it equally spaced between grommets. So you notice I'm a little bit far from that one. So right there looks pretty good. And we are a little bit away from our mesh material, probably a little bit too much. I'm going to get a little bit closer to that fold, like that and like that. We're going to peel off the transfer paper on this, the 12-inch batten, and this one goes on so that it is centered between the seam and so forth, and a little bit away from the mesh, and put it on as straight as possible. If it's, make sure the ends are, see, there's my seam here and my seam over here, so even if your center's off a little bit, then you want it basically for the seam should be the same, the excess on the ends. Okay, once it's on and a little bit away from the mesh, which it is, it looks like it's straight.
On the rear of the sheet bag, we'll be installing 3 hard action snaps.
So I'm going to take an awl and I'm going to punch right through the canvas once I have that positioned. So, and I punched pretty deep so that I have a pretty good hole for all 3 of these locations. From the Sailrite drill hole cutter set, I use the 1/8-inch hole cutter. You could just use the awl too, but this just makes it easier. And the batten's still underneath here, and I'll just go through like this to basically enlarge the fabric a little bit for each one of those locations. So you don't know where that one is, I'll do it here too. These are 5/16-inch eyelets, and these are hard action sockets that come with the kit. We're going to take an eyelet and we're going to stick it on the underside of the batten through the hole and up through the canvas, and make sure that this sticks out like that. We're going to take our anvil here. This is for buttons, this is for eyelets. So the eyelet side's up. We'll put it down here, make sure that it's resting on that. And then we're going to take our socket, put it on top of that, and then put our tool up here, and I'm going to give it a few blows with a mallet until it's rolled over and it no longer spins, which is perfect.
We'll repeat that procedure for the middle one and the opposite end one. Now we'll fold the remainder of the facing around the top of the bag and sew it.
Make sure the double-sided tape here is on well by just pressing on it, and then peel off the transfer paper all the way around here. We have both battens in place. One is just stuck down on this side, so make sure it doesn't fall off on you. And then we're going to fold this down. I'm going to start with that one since it's stuck in place, and then press on the material. Sometimes it's easier to do this on a table. Then what I'm going to do is I'm not going to work on the small sides. I'm actually going to come across to here and fold this one down. So like this, fold it down and stick it down. Okay, and then we work on the sides. So now I come to the sides, and we want the facing to be even and flat. So we want to work out as many of the wrinkles as possible as we do this. So we're going to do that all the way around on this side, and then I'll show you what we do to the inside surface. Okay, if you have any wrinkles, you can just peel it up, and then you can work them mostly out. If you do have any wrinkles at all, put them back here towards these snap ends, because that's the back side, but we've got it on nicely there. So now we're going to take the transfer paper off of this side, and we want this to be even with the bottom side. And so you might have to take a flashlight in there. I can kind of see through it. I'm not sure that you can. You want to just do this all around the perimeter, make it as even as possible. So manipulate things if you have to. Otherwise, oops, I didn't take the transfer paper off. That's why it's not sticking.
At this location on the back side, on the inside, we should have installed a Sailrite tag. Here's a look ahead at us installing the Sailrite tag to the back side on the inside of our bag, because we forgot to put it on when we were basting the facing to the bag. Because we forgot to slip it in while we were basting, we're installing an additional stitch to hold the tag in place on the inside of the back of the bag.
We're going to sew along this edge, and this is a little bit hard because the battens are in here. So I'm going to fold this back, and sometimes I have to walk the foot up to get this in here. I'm going to start at the back edge just a little bit prior to these stitches, and I want to sew next to this foot with the needle in center position, not next to the outside of the center foot, because I want to make sure that I hit the bottom side. Okay, so we're going to sew this way. The bag is still wrong side out. I'm going to do a little bit of reversing here. So just 1 or 2 stitches, okay? And then I'm going to carefully sew around the perimeter, making sure that my stitch is nice and straight. This is the outside surface where you're going to see the stitch is actually, this is going to be the outside surface when we turn the bag right side out. So when I get to here, I'm just going to roll the fabric around, make sure everything is still stuck down well. If I make adjustments, I want to do it with the needle down so I don't lose my position. And sew a little bit at a time. So now look, I'm kind of like in the cup of it. So what I'll do here is my needle is buried, I think, and I'm going to pull this around like this, and I'm going to straighten the fabric. Just a patience job more than anything else. I should have put a logo, a Sailrite tag in the other side before I sewed this on, but I'll show you how we contend with that. So here I'm coming to the beginning where we started sewing, and I want to do 1 stitch in reverse several times. There we go. Now let's take it out and let's put that logo in that I should have put in, because it doesn't go on this side, it goes on the other side. The Sailrite tag should have gone here. This is the wrong side of the bag, and this is the back side where the snaps are, but we forgot to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open this up a little bit. It's got a little bit of area that I can stuff it into and put it in. The reason I want to have this in the kit is it's a DIY project, and it shows the world that you did it yourself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew really close to this edge to sew this tag in place. So I pulled this other side out of the way, and I fed it in someplace where it was a little bit thinner. And I am going to put that stitch super close to that edge to try to catch this tag. And we'll do a little bit of reversing here. And right here. There we go.
2 more grommets are required for our SuperShok Bungee Cord.
I'm going to turn the bag right side out, and we have to put in 2 more grommets and obviously the shock cord. This is the back side with the snaps, and we need to put a grommet close to this batten. I can feel the batten, its end is right here. I'm going to put a cutting pad here because we definitely don't want to cut through. And this grommet goes all the way through. So if I position the grommet here, like that, I will just miss that batten. I want it close to it. So right about there should be perfect. I'm going to use my number 0 Sailrite drill hole cutter and position it there and drill through. Okay, and then we'll do that same thing on the other side. Notice it's in the middle here, and I will put the male through the hole. The hole is a little bit smaller intentionally, so you do have to force it in there. Like that. I'm going to put the anvil in and rest it on that anvil at the right spot. And then I'm going to put the teeth over top of this. This is the part with the teeth. And give it a few blows with the mallet. Okay, and there we have it installed. And we will do the same thing over here on this side.
Lacing this special bungee cord called SuperShok is next.
Okay, these are 2 shock cords. This is a regular shock cord, and you can see there are all kinds of little elasties inside of there, rubber bands basically. This one is called SuperShok Bungee Cord, available from Sailrite, and its core is completely solid, and the casing is polyester, so it actually lasts as long as a rope does, where this one, the standard shock cord in the sun, won't last long at all. That's why we include this one in this size in the sheet bag kit. So it's an excellent shock cord that'll give you years of service. For each sheet bag, you need a length unstretched of about 20 inches. That's what we've cut here. I've cut it with scissors. I'm just going to touch the polyester core with a hot knife to keep it from unraveling a little bit. You can also do this with a lighter carefully. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to feed it in through the front. And this is going to go into these grommets. These grommets don't go all the way through, so you have to kind of open them up to form a pocket that you can feed it through. And it's going to go all the way to the grommet on the other side. So there it is, and I'll just stop right there, and I can use needle nose, or I'm using the edge guide pliers to pull it through. So make sure you don't pull this out on the other end. I'm going to just do a loose knot on this because 20 inches seems short, but it's probably going to work fine. So I'm not going to tighten that down all the way. That'll keep me from pulling out. Then this side goes through the back grommet. So from the back side, and the knot gets put on the inside. So right here, and then I'm just going to tie a regular knot. This will fold in. So there's no reason to do more than one because the grommet is small enough to hold this. And the knots on this shock cord don't work out like they do on standard shock cords. So we're going to do it like that and pull it taut. And believe me, it's hard to get that knot out. Okay, so we got that side done. Now we're going to come over here and loosen up this one that we put in loosely. They don't come out once they're just pretty hard. And then fold this back, and we're going to feed it in in the same manner, and you can tension this however you like. So whatever kind of tension you want on this bag, the sky's the limit. If you want to cut longer shock cord than 20 inches, that's fine too, if you would like it a little bit looser. But let's just show you what it's like at 20 inches with a knot like that. Pull it tight. And so now the bag is complete and your hole is this large. If you'd like to go large, make it tighter, then just obviously move your knot a little bit closer.
In this chapter, we're going to show you how to attach the YKK Snads. We're going to use a primer for secure attachment.
These are YKK Snads, and this is the stud style. So it's a domed fastener that has a VHB, very high bond 3M glue on the back side, so you don't have to drill a hole in your boat. I'm going to go ahead and snap them to each one of the hard action snaps. That way we know exactly where they go, and we'll actually put them on the boat using a primer before we install them. We have our sheet bag here, and we have the snads on the back. We haven't removed the adhesive. We're going to have some cushions here, probably no more than 3 inches at the minimal, so we want to make sure I'm up off of the cushions. So with it level, then all we need to do is mark it, and sometimes you can mark even just with a number 2 pencil. And the snads are up here, so I'm just going to go around it like this and mark it softly. This is the top portion of the snads. So now we know where those snads go. We want to clean the surface with some alcohol, isopropyl alcohol or alcohol prep pads. And I try to just put it on the location where I'm going to be applying the snad, because sometimes it can affect some of the coatings of some fiberglass surfaces. So we'll clean there, clean for all 3 of these spots, and make sure that the alcohol evaporates before we apply the primer. 3M Primer 94 is used next, and we'll break the tube, and then you'll see the liquid run down to the applicator, and we'll run this on the surface where the snad will be installed. This is highly recommended. I wouldn't install them without it. So there is that one, and you do have a few minutes of working time, so you don't have to rush through this. And if it were snaps, you'd probably be able to use it for maybe 10 or 12 applications for these snads before you'll need another one, sometimes more. And we want to let that cure a little bit. Sometimes I go over the spots one more time to make sure that we have enough, and I'll let that cure. Now we're going to take the backing off of the snad, and we're going to try not to touch the adhesive on the back side of the snad. And we want to try to get this positioned perfectly so I can still see my pencil marks. And I'm going to position all of them on there because we know that we're level and in the right spot. Right there. And the idea here is I'm going to press on these first outer ones. You want to do this for a few minutes, and then I'll apply pressure to the middle one as well. So I'm going to actually use all my thumb and my fingers and my knuckles. Do this for at least a minute. I'd go a little bit longer if I were you. Okay, our sheet bag is now installed. Now you're supposed to not use it for 72 hours or have any weight hanging on it, but this is very light, and we're going to cheat and use it. But it really does look great. So let's just say these are our sheets. That opens up like this and closes just like that, and they would just drop in like so, and you've got a great sheet bag for the storage of your sheets or winch handle or whatever you'd like.
You now know how to make your sheet bag in 2 different sizes, a large or a small. This is the large. You can now make the second one in the same manner. Let's go ahead and get started now showing you how to make the winch cover. To use the included pattern, we first need to take measurements of the winch that you desire to cover.
To measure the winch, you simply need 2 measurements. You need a height measurement all the way to the deck, and for this we get 7 inches. And then you need a circumference measurement around the bottom or the widest part of the wrench. and we get 19 inches for this. So those are the only two measurements we need for the winch cover.
With those measurements, we can modify the pattern for the size winch that you need.
Okay, we have two winch bodies, one here and one up there, and the instructions up here say the circumference plus 1.25 equals the cut length rounded up to the nearest line. So we'll show how to do that. And the height is 1 inch more than what we measured. Ours was 7 inches, so we're going to go up to the 8-inch line, which is already on the pattern, and we're just going to take a straight edge. We're taking the clear acrylic ruler, and we're going to mark from this mark on this side, obviously, to the 8-inch mark over here. Okay, so that one's that. Now the circumference on ours was 19 inches. 19 plus 1.25 is 20.25. So that means we need to go 20.5 would be right here. We need to round up to the next line. So we're going to go to the blue line. And so what I do is I just put an arrow on it so I know what line to cut. And that means that when we go to the winch top, we can either use 1 or 2. I'll just use 1. We need to count from this side in, but we don't really need to count. We'll just go by the color code. So there's the first, second, and the third blue, and that's the one we're on. So I'll put an arrow on that. We're going to cut on that one. Everything's pinned in place, and we're going to use the Sailrite edge hot knife and cut with the precision cutting blade and foot. And we're going to cut right through the pattern material and the Sattler Marine Grade fabric at the same time. And we're going to need to make sure that you toggle the trigger. You don't want to hold down on the trigger too long because it can get cherry red. So I'm going to go all the way to 21, and then we'll cut up, and we'll cut this out, and I'll show you how we cut the circle because it's pretty cool what you can do with this foot with the circle. I'll go a little bit past that so I can make that turn. So we're going to cut on this black line that we struck at 8 inches, and then we'll cut the circle out. So the choker cut size is the cut length of the body, which we just cut out, and the cut height of the body divided by 2. So ours is 8 inches. This is after our calculation of cutting out the body, so we just need to make it 4 inches high. What I'm going to do is just use this and mark it at 4 inches because there's our 4 inches. We're going to put lines on this in the future. We should have done that for you already. In the future ones you'll see lines, and then the length is exactly the same. So we're going to strike a line there, and we'll cut this choker out. Sometimes when you're using the precision foot, it's a good idea to cut to your cut point. That way you can actually just take your blade and you can insert it in there and then push down on the trigger, and then it'll start cutting beautifully like that. We'll go a little bit past this, and then I'll make a T-junction here. Okay, the circle's kind of cool. We're going to that blue line, so I'm just going to trim up to that blue line like that. And I'm going to use the precision cutting blade and foot with the Sailrite edge hot knife. This is the cordless version, and look at this. Isn't that cool? So you get a hot knifed edge that will not easily unravel, which is really important for these winches because they're not double hemmed.
Up next, we'll hem the body and we'll create a sleeve for the choker.
Okay, we're going to take the patterns off. They will stick a little bit since you used a hot knife, but that actually is not bad. And this is the winch choker, and this is the body. Onto the body, we're going to take our clear acrylic ruler and place it 1 inch from the bottom edge, and then mark it. I'm using a chalk pencil, or I think it's called chalk pen actually, but we have other things too you can choose. And then on the choker, we're going to measure up 1.5 inches from its edge. Doesn't matter the edge, there's no right side or wrong side to any of these Sattler fabrics, except for the ones with coatings on them. Now we're going to put the seam stick that's included in the kit along this edge. I'm going to use the Sailrite canvas patterning ruler to adhere it well. We're going to create a 1/2 inch hem here, so we're going to fold up to that chalk line. Now don't worry about the chalk residue. Chalk comes off of this fabric fairly easily, but as with any fabric marking pencil, you always want to test before you use it. Okay, and then I'm going to crease it well. Now on the choker, I'm going to create a hem up to that 1.5 inch line, but I'm not going to use double-sided tape because sometimes the shock cord that goes in here can get stuck in it. So what I do here is I crease it by hand first up to that line, and then I use the Sailrite canvas patterning ruler and crease it really, really well. No double-sided tape for this one. Now this is an 1/8 inch shock cord. It's very, very small, but in past winch covers we used a larger shock cord, but I believe this will actually work better. So that's why we put it in this kit. And I obviously just cut it so it's about 2 inches longer on each end. We're going to take both these to the sewing machine. We could put down the magnetic guide just to make sure that we're accurate, and it's probably not a bad idea. And I want to do a little bit of reversing here. Then you want to sew as straight as possible along this edge and do reversing at the end. So we're going to sew close to that edge. It's already hot knife, so you shouldn't have any problems with it unraveling. And do a little bit of reversing here. Let me cut this thread. And sew, making sure that the shock cord is being fed in and you're not sewing into the shock cord as you sew.
We'll now secure the choker to the body so that we can use it to hold the winch cover on.
This is the body. The hem is up right now. We want to turn it so that the outside surfaces are facing each other, so the hem is up now on the top side and the bottom side. We fold it in half and we sew a 1/2 inch. So I'm going to put this at the 1/2 inch mark on the needle plate, and my needle's already in the halfway position now. And we sew this together at a 1/2 inch. And make sure that you do it at a 1/2 inch, otherwise the circle may not fit perfectly, which is okay, it's just not great. So do some reversing here, do a little bit of heavy reversing at the bottom edge, because that's the only thing that's going to be holding this together. And sew all the way to this end and do heavy reversing at it as well. This is the hemmed edge. We're going to fold it so outside surfaces are facing each other again. So here I'm not going to sew it at a 1/2 inch. I'm actually going to wiggle it in about 1/8 of an inch. So basically at 3/8 of an inch. And I'm going to start here, do some heavy reversing again. And I'm not going to sew all the way through the shock cord. I'm going to sew up to this and land in it, and then just do some reversing here. So that's that. Hem is up here, hem is up here. We're going to take this and we're going to insert it inside of the choker. And this is going to actually be folded down. So I want to crease this, I forgot to do that. And I want to crease this down like that. Let's do that first. Crease that on that stitch. And then we'll put it inside of the smaller one. Let's get it in there first. So the bottom edges are going to be lined up, and this will be splayed open like a little butterfly into that choker edge. Trying to make it so you can see it. Like that. So that's what it should look like. And then I'm going to just put this in here, and this is going to be a tacking stitch, so you can start anywhere. It's not going to be a stitch that's going to be visible. It's just to hold it in place while we put the circle on. So I'm just right up against this foot. I don't want to be more than a 1/2 inch from that edge, because a 1/2 inch will be where my original stitch lands. I do a little bit of reversing, and I'll just sew around the perimeter doing this tacking stitch. So that stitch is probably an 1/8 inch away from the edge of the fabric, and then you can roll this around kind of like this as you sew.
Onto that assembly, we'll sew the circular top on now.
So this is our circle, and I do recommend that you cut some slits all around the perimeter. It just makes it a little bit easier. Don't go more than a 1/2 inch. Now there's a second way to do this. You could use a notcher if you have it. This actually works pretty well and notches it beautifully. So we're going to go all the way around, putting slits about, what is this, every 1/4 inch or so. So the best way to do this is to insert the circle inside of this. This is the outside surfaces. This is obviously the inside surface. And just start anywhere. I'm going to start right about here. And I'm going to put it in. And we're going to sew a 1/2 inch from this edge. So our top stitch is going to disappear because of that. I'm also going to put the magnetic guide down just as a reference. Hopefully that doesn't get in the way of your camera view. And then all you do is you basically just push this around. I'm not going to reverse here, but I will reverse when I come back to those stitches. So I see how I'm moving the circle. So it's right up against the magnetic guide as it's parallel to the needle. That's all you do to do this. Now, when we get to the beginning point, I'm going to stop like 2 inches or so before I get to where I began sewing. And I want to make sure that all my panels are going to match up perfectly, because you can actually modify it slightly by shrinking one up over the other. But for now, all I'm going to do is just keep doing this around the entire perimeter until we get to about 2 inches before where we started, and then we'll show you what we do there. So I roll this around as I sew. These are fabric edge match pliers, and they can help pull circles into place. I wanted to show doing it by hand, but if you do this, it's actually a lot easier. You can only do 1 inch at a time, but it definitely makes sewing circles easier. Now I'm coming up to the point where I'm almost two inches from the start position over here. And what I want to do is I want to make sure that I'm not going to have too much fabric in here. And so you almost have to walk this around by hand to see. And I think it looks like it's going to be okay. When I get closer, I might make modifications if I need to, but let's just see, because I'm too far to tell for sure. Oh yeah, I think I'm gonna come out pretty nice. Look for wrinkles down here, and I don't think there's going to be any. It looks like we've got about equal amounts of fabric. So I think we're going to be good here. So I can move those out of the way. I'm going to try to flatten this. Yep, I don't have any wrinkles. And I'm going to sew over my previous stitches a little bit, because I didn't do any reversing there. I probably should have. And then once I'm over them by about 1 inch, I'm going to do some reversing. I'm going to do some reversing right here, making sure that I actually sew off into the seam allowance area rather than in the circle. That way I don't see the reversing from the inside. And there is our circle.
Tensioning the shock cord that's used inside the choker is next.
Before we turn it right side out, we're going to take this choker, and I'm actually going to raise it up kind of like a flower. This gives us the ability to tension it easily. So it's up like this. And then what we can do, because we want to take out about half the shock cord, so I'm going to pull on this one, distribute the wrinkles in the canvas, and I'll hold that, and then I'll pull on this one. Basically, we're just trying to shrink it up to almost half the size, and it's totally adjustable depending on the size winch that you have. You just want this to be able to hold well. Since this shock cord is hidden from the sun, because it's inside of a sleeve, it does last a long time. You don't have to worry about that as much with a shock cord that's totally hidden. Then we're going to tie probably 3 underhand or overhand knots. If I can find, yeah, there we go. There's one, and I am going to leave the tails a little bit long, because if I need to release some, I can, and I will use a hot knife, so I'll leave them probably that long. I'll use a hot knife and touch the ends, and we'll leave it like that. Now we can turn it right side out after I use a hot knife. And we'll see what it looks like. So I'm going to turn it right side out, and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so there's what she looks like. There will be small wrinkles in it, because when you do sewing, math doesn't always work out exceptionally well. There's a small one right there. Had I had bigger wrinkles, I probably would have distributed them around the perimeter, but this one was pretty much right on, which is good. And there's what the choker looks on the inside, and we'll show you how to put it on the winch next.
In this chapter, we'll show you how to install the winch cover on your winch.
So our winch cover is complete, and to install it you need to turn it almost wrong side out, not all the way, but enough to get to the choker. So the choker is here. Straighten out the choker a little bit. It's a little bit stiff when it's brand new, but softens up over time. And then install the choker over the top portion of the winch. That keeps it from blowing away. And then simply pull the cover down around the winch. Again, this is brand new, so it's got some stiffness to it. As soon as it's used for a while, it'll definitely soften up. So let's get this in position. So there's what our winch cover looks like. There's the top. It's a pretty good fit all around, and it fits nicely at the bottom. Turn it around, you can see what it looks like everywhere. There is one seam to the side, but that's what you can expect from the Sailrite winch cover kits. And this is a self-tailoring winch, but it works also for the non-self-tailoring winches.
The Sailrite sheet bag and winch cover kit will accommodate 2 of the sheet bags and 2 winch covers in the sizes listed here. Be sure to check out the materials and tools that we used in the description of this video. You'll also see which ones are included in the kit. I'm Eric Grant, and from all of us here at Sailrite, thanks for watching.